Welcome to Gut Tales. I'm Emma, and today we are going to talk about IBD myths, what everyone gets wrong, because I can guarantee you, if you have inflammatory bowel disease or even another autoimmune disease, you have probably heard family members or friends or well-meaning strangers or not well-meaning strangers telling you that there is something you did that possibly developed your illness. And so let's bust some of these IBD myths. IBD myth number one, you got IBD because of something you ate. If I could count how many times I've been told this, like it would be so many times. Honestly, I can't even keep count. It is such a myth because IBD is so much more complicated than just something you put in your mouth. IBD is what is known as a multifactorial illness, meaning that there are several things that could possibly contribute to the development of IBD, and scientists don't yet know what is the cause of IBD. And so because of this, we don't know, but what we can do is the best we can once we're diagnosed to minimize our symptoms and hopefully put our disease in remission. So I promise you, there is literally nothing that you ate that caused you to develop inflammatory bowel disease. I don't care what anybody tells you. So risk factors of IBD development, potential low fiber diet, smoking, stress, environmental stress, etc., etc., etc. I mean, the list goes on, but they don't know. That is just what scientists think may cause IBD, but we don't know. There is a genetic component to it, but again, you're most likely to develop IBD if you have a first-degree relative, meaning that my children are more likely to develop IBD than, say, their cousins, because I am their first degree relative. However, their chances are still quite low in developing IBD. So again, I want to assure you, you did not develop IBD because of something you ate. If anybody tells you that, tell them they don't know what they're talking about, but odds are they don't know what they're talking about anyway, because people who know what they're talking about don't preach to you and aren't condescending and don't blame you for the development of your disease. Your doctor, any scientist that understands inflammatory bowel disease should never, ever say it was something that you did to develop inflammatory bowel disease. And if they do, again, that's your cue to know that they have no idea what they're talking about. So if you do hear that from your doctor or from somebody that you're working with, then know that they have no idea what they're talking about. Fire them and find another provider. Myth number two, you can avoid medication if you eat a clean diet. This is a huge myth because guess what? Sometimes you can do everything right in the diet area, meaning you could eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, you could eat lean proteins, you could eat whole grains, and you may still flare. And you may still need medication. And I cannot tell you how many times I went down the rabbit hole thinking something was wrong with me when I would try every single miracle cure IBD diet and it didn't help put my disease in remission. I tried the specific carbohydrate diet. I tried the vegan diet, the raw vegan diet, the anti-inflammatory diet, literally the fruitarian diet. And that ultimately was a diet that almost killed me, by the way. Sometimes you can eat what most would consider as a very well dietary pattern, which for any healthy person eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, dairy or dairy alternative, that is the ideal dietary pattern for a healthy person. However, when we have inflammatory bowel disease, our symptoms and our bodies are quite different, and sometimes we can eat very, very well and still be sick. Sometimes we can eat very, very bad, as in, there were times that I survived off of chips, salsa, and a rice, cheese, and bean onion burrito and somehow didn't flare. But there were times that I would eat a very, very healthy vegan, vegetarian, or even raw vegan diet, and I would be incredibly sick. Even trying the specific carbohydrate diet, which is written for people with IBD, I still didn't do well on that. And again, it's not because of anything that I ate or didn't eat. It was because that was the cycle my disease was in. And I have moderate to severe Crohn's disease, meaning that my disease is quite active. And so sometimes, again, what I'm trying to let you all know is that you can do everything right in the diet area and still flare. Or sometimes you could just binge on restaurant after restaurant, day after day, and not flare. It just really depends on the cycle of your disease. And so what is recommended for people with IBD? Obviously, you should work with a registered dietitian that specializes in inflammatory bowel disease. Now, I have seen registered dietitians say that they can help IBD patients, but then they also state that they help type 2 diabetes patients and chronic kidney disease patients. And there's a whole list of patients that they help. And yes, if you're in a hospital setting, absolutely, you see a variety of patients, you can absolutely help them. But for one-on-one medical nutrition therapy over a long course of time, it is best that you find a registered dietitian who solely does study and stay up to date with the most research-based nutrition interventions for inflammatory bowel disease. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you need help with your diet, finding like what your trigger foods are or what is causing you digestive distress, see an IBD specific registered dietitian who mostly just works with IBD patients. That is what I recommend. However, registered dietitians are trained to work with a variety of chronic disease patients. So if you cannot find an IBD specific registered dietitian, seeing a registered dietitian is better than seeing a holistic health coach or a functional nutritionist, and anybody that is not a registered dietitian who is not qualified to help your illness. So be kind with yourself. Sometimes your body is just in a cycle where it's going to flare no matter what. I cannot tell you how many times this happened to me, and it was very frustrating. I ended up figuring out my dietary pattern by trial and error, keeping a journal, and that is one thing I cannot stress enough, is keeping a food journal may help you identify your trigger foods. I know it's not sexy, I know it's not exciting, but food journals really may help you realize that there may be a specific food or ingredient that is causing you digestive distress that you would have never thought of. And I will give you an example. There was one holiday season I loved a specific peppermint mocha type, or it's called peppermint bark syrup. And I would put it in my homemade morning latte, and I loved it. But within 2 weeks, I started realizing that my hands and my feet weren't feeling very well. My joints were kind of achy. And so I thought about it, and, I realized that the liquid, the peppermint bark syrup, had carrageenan in it. And so I was like, maybe this ingredient, which has been known to potentially cause issues in IBD patients. They have studies on mice. Again, we are not mice. We don't use mice studies to make our decisions off of, but there is a small trial on humans, and they did find no difference between those who did carrageenan and those who don't. However, I know for a fact that for me personally, my body doesn't do well with carrageenan because it causes my joints to hurt if I consume it consecutively for 4 days or more. And that's me personally. When I tell another IBD patient, avoid carrageenan, not necessarily if they can consume it, but the best way to know is by keeping a food journal. And so I stopped putting that syrup in my morning lattes, and within a week or two, my joints felt much better. And so that is how I was able to identify that carrageenan does not work well for me personally. But just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you. But the best way you could know is to keep a food journal. I will always be an advocate of food journals. Myth number 3, you did something that caused your IBD to develop. Again, this kind of goes with myth bust number 1, that there was something you ate that caused IBD. There is not one specific thing that you did that caused you to develop IBD. Again, IBD is multifactorial, meaning that it has more than one cause, and we don't know what it is. The best IBD researchers in the world, best gastroenterologists who treat IBD patients in the world, do not know what caused IBD. So because of that, there is not one thing that you did. We have to stop patient blaming here. And that is what I call it. I say that it is, it is healthy people privilege, in the sense that they look at IBD patients and they'll be like, oh, well, you're sick because you ate a greasy hamburger every Wednesday for several years. No, it just is not that simple. IBD is not that simple of an illness. It is very complicated. But what they're doing is they are blaming the patient. And, if you have never been sick with IBD and you don't go through what IBD patients go through, you cannot criticize an IBD patient. I have IBD, and I would never look at an IBD patient and say, oh my gosh, that's why you're sick, or oh my gosh, that's why your IBD developed. No way. Because guess what? We don't know what causes IBD, and people should stop blaming the patient for being sick. I cannot tell you how many times I heard throughout my IBD career of over 18 years, oh, you're flaring again? It must have been something you ate. No, no, that's not how it works. So let's just stop. So please be kind with yourself. So, what can you do to potentially improve your life with IBD if you're going through a flare? One, be kind to yourself. Accept your illness for what it is. It is not going to go away. I understand that it may seem bleak, it may seem dark, it may seem depressing. You may feel like things will never get better, but I am here to tell you eventually, at some point in your journey, things will get better. Two, do not let others shame you and do not feel ashamed. If there is somebody in your life who is blaming you for flaring, who is blaming you for being sick, who is blaming you for developing IBD, then tell them that what they are doing is wrong. Or just wash them out of your life, because you do not need people like that in your life. Life is already hard enough, especially when you have inflammatory bowel disease. You do not need to have people around you that make you feel bad about yourself. If you do feel depressed or sad, or it's hard for you to get out of bed, you don't know why you feel sad, I really recommend that you see a mental health care provider. I, as a patient, wish I would have seen a mental health care provider when I was first diagnosed. I personally think that that should be part of an IBD patient's care plan. I think that when an IBD patient is diagnosed, they should have a gastroenterologist, an IBD specific registered dietitian, a mental health care provider, all on their team to help them deal with the fact that their life has changed forever. And so just be kind with yourself. And three, keep a food journal. It may help you it may help you realize foods that are potential trigger foods. I cannot tell you how many times I've identified foods that I never thought would be trigger foods just based off of a food journal. And lastly, give yourself a hug. I know that sounds so cheesy, but realize that though you may think your body is broken and though your body is not performing the way you want it to perform, just realize that it is trying to get better, and give yourself permission to rest. Resting is important. I know in our society, many people think that resting and not grinding daily is, lazy, but it's not. Because when we're sick, the best thing for our body is to rest, because our body uses that energy while we're resting to help restore itself. And lastly, do not feel like a failure if you have to go on medication. There are some of us, I think roughly 20% of IBD patients need biologic medication. We have to be on biologics. Our disease is moderate to severe. I know my body personally has to be on a biologic, otherwise I will be very, very sick. My quality of life has improved dramatically for being on biologics. And I finally just accepted that it is what it is. Would I rather be running to the bathroom somewhere between 12 to 18 times a day, not having a quality of life, not being able to, take my kids to hockey or walk my kids to the bus stop, No, I wouldn't. And so no matter what diet I tried or ate, or how clean I ate, or how all organic I ate, or how many wellness fads I tried, none of it compared to the biologic medication that I'm on. And trust me, I know they're scary. I fought being on a biologic for so long, but I finally accepted that, hey, this is the card I was dealt. This is what my body needs, and it is what it is. And so the sooner that you accept your illness, accept that you may need to be on a medication, it'll help ease the struggle that we go through, because again, it's hard enough being a patient. And when we are constantly fighting the fact that we were diagnosed with a chronic illness, or constantly fighting the fact that we may have to go on a medication, and we're trying all these wellness fads instead that are potentially making us worse, it doesn't help. And so be kind with yourself. Know that I'm here for you. Know that there are several other IBD patients that rally around you. Find a support group. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has great IBD support groups. link up with people, link up with your tribe, and do not have anybody in your life that blames you for getting sick or blames you when you start flaring. I hope you all have a great day. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I love interacting with you all, and I hope you all have a great day.